So much for consistency.
Thank you. The honourable member's time has expired on the debate. I thank all the members for taking part in the debate. The honourable government House Leader on tomorrow's hours and order of business.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House to now rise to meet again tomorrow at the hour of 12 noon. The House will sit from 12 until 8 p.m. 12 until 8 p.m. The order of business following the daily routine will be public bills for second reading. And, Mr. Speaker, we'll start off with Bill number 2, and when we complete, or if we complete Bill 2, we'll carry on down the order papers 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 15, etc. Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House now rise.
Until 12 noon tomorrow. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The House is adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow. We've now reached the moment of interruption. The subject for this evening's late debate was submitted by the honourable member for Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley.
During late debate this evening and speak about some of the challenges that the farming community in Nova Scotia face, and as well I'd like to encourage all members in the House to recognize, acknowledge those challenges, and possibly through the various caucuses we can collectively agree to support the agriculture community. Mr. Speaker, as you know, just a couple of short years ago, the province of Nova Scotia had to endure and bear a very severe drought. And Mr. Speaker, as a consequence of the drought, many farmers were put behind the 8 ball. They were required to bring feed in from western locations, and as well, there was certainly a financial toll that was sustained by the farming community. That was a challenge, Mr. Speaker, just a couple short years ago that the farming community had to deal with. More recently, of course, the farming community has been wrestling with what is truly a national crisis, and that is the BSE issue, or the mad cow disease, Mr. Speaker. Now, the mad cow disease, as mythical as it may be, is certainly a very, very devastating and serious issue for Nova Scotia farmers. It doesn't matter what commodity, or at least it seems as if it doesn't matter what commodity you are engaged in as a farmer, you are impacted and affected by the mad cow disease. Did you know, Mr. Speaker, and I know you're very keenly interested in this issue because you took time out of your busy schedule to attend the rally that was sponsored by the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture out in Murray Siding not too long ago. But did you know that as well as beef, whether it's beef on the hoof or muscleless meat and things of that nature, that dairy replacement cattle are shipped across or at least were shipped before May across the United States border. Dairy replacement cattle. So we're not just talking about the dairy farmer that has to cull a few, and that's a regular occurrence on a dairy farm, at least on a reasonably sized dairy farm. You have some slaughter cows, you have some culls, and on many occasions, the farmer and their family will take those cattle up to the Maritime Cattle Market, and as we refer to it out in Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley, they take their cattle to the auction in Murray Siding, and that auction is held every Thursday. And there's varied agriculture animals that go through the auction, but I remember as a small boy going to that auction, so it's been around for a while, Mr. Speaker, and especially in the winter months and late in the fall, it didn't seem unusual, or in the spring, to see that auction run, if you will, or operate and function from the late morning hours through until maybe midnight on occasion, certainly into the late hours, 10, 11 o'clock and things of that nature. But now, if you go to the cattle sale barn in Murray Siding, and I have, Mr. Speaker, you may find that auction has wrapped up before 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the reason for that is because the mad cow disease has impacted the beef, the dairy, the hog, the sheep, the poultry, all those sectors. So while the farmers and their families have been directly impacted, of course, the facilitators of the maritime cattle market have been impacted as well. The gentleman right across the road, John Eustace, who repairs machinery right directly across the road. I stopped in to see John. John's a constituent, a heck of a nice fellow. And John said that his business, relative to farm machinery and things of that nature, has certainly lessened since the mad cow disease became such an issue. So the Minister of Agriculture in our government, the Honourable Member for Argyll, in an effort to support the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture and the farming community, has decided to put together a task force on the mad cow disease. Now, Mr. Speaker, I did lose my notes, but going from recall, I understand that the mandate, if you will, the terms of reference of the task force is to determine the impacts of the BSE, mad cow disease, on the agriculture industry in Nova Scotia, and determine whether or not the existing provincial, federal, and industry programs have the capacity to deal with the consequences of the mad cow disease. Now, having said that, I think we recognize, and I trust all committee members, and I'm very pleased that the Honourable Member for, now he'll have to tell me his riding. I know he's not Kings West because Mr. Levine is. The Honourable Member for Annapolis, Mr. Speaker, has agreed to come on the task force, and we're very pleased that he has, because he will be joining with some very, very prominent stakeholders and producers that have been keen to find out what the consequences, what the rationale for the mad cow disease is, and what we might be able to do better to assist the farming community in Nova Scotia. Unlike the NDP agriculture critic, I might add, who has all kinds of time in this legislature to table resolutions that would negatively impact the farming community and table petitions. And I have a couple here, Mr. Speaker, that it probably wouldn't hurt to table again, but for the purposes of this discussion, I'll keep these documents for a later date. But, you know, what we have to find out, I guess, you know, we know that the mad cow disease is a threat, and it presents a threat and will continue to present a threat to the Nova Scotia farming community until the border is fully open. It's a national crisis. Nova Scotia, you know, it would be naive for any of us to think that we can solve the mad cow disease here in this province. But what we can do, I believe, is look at the farming community as a whole, listen to what they're saying, and as the Minister indicated today in question period, in response to a question that was directed to him by the Honourable Member for Annapolis, try to come back with some recommendations and hopefully find some possible solutions. The Provincial Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries will be meeting, I would like to think on a frequent basis, with the Federal Minister of Agriculture, but the report that we will table here in the Nova Scotia Legislature will provide the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries with some necessary information and, in fact, evidence that will help him with his negotiations. It will help him and his department, I trust, the Deputy Minister and the bureaucrats, quite frankly, with guidance, with direction as to how they might. It may not mean just throwing money at something. And Mr. Speaker, you suggested as the MLA for Cumberland South before the large audience in Murray Siding that, you know, we're here to listen. We came out, as you indicated, and there may be some things we can do, you know, in promoting Nova Scotia commodities and beef and things like that. But just to say that we can pull the answer out of the sky or out of the air, that's not going to happen, and I don't think anybody in here thinks that. But I am very pleased that with the composition of the task force, I've been asked to chair the task force, but we do have producers. We have a former Minister of Agriculture who appeared to have a good rapport with the agriculture community. We have the chairman of the Nova Scotia Farm Loan Board from Inverness, Cape Breton, I might add. We have Mr. Don Cox, who's the first vice president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture. And again, I suggest to the NDP caucus, and I know that the agriculture critic for the NDP caucus perhaps didn't decide on his own, but he probably made it clear to his caucus colleagues when they caucused whether or not he'd go on the task force that it may be in his best political interest not to go on it, because, you know, what we're trying to do is help solve an issue that the farming community has. And you know, I would challenge the member for Hants East. The other day he made what I consider to be a very unflattering comment that I had been asked to, Mr. Scott, you know pardon me, Mr. Speaker, you recognize that the rationale behind me being asked to chair the task force, but for that honourable member to make you know, an insulting comment like it was done to keep me shut up or something like that, and not as hidden acknowledgement, I would challenge him to come over into my riding and go into the farming community and speak to the beef farmers and talk to the people across Nova Scotia and tell them that he would like Mr. Taylor just to go away into a corner and not say anything about agriculture. Well, if he thinks that's what he's going to do by staying off the task force, then he can take that agenda. But I would think that the Tory caucus and the Liberal caucus are interested in finding out the root cause of the mad cow disease and trying to help the agriculture community, not taking an adversarial approach as the member for Hants East has. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will take my seat. Thank you.
Recognize Yelmo, member for Hants East.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the resolution by the honourable member from Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley. I never knew the member from Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley before coming to this House, Mr. Speaker. He is fairly well thought of in his constituency. And I have no large axe to grind with him. If he's put out by my comments the other day about the only thing I've seen this task force do was to keep him quiet, he's probably doesn't have as thick a skin as I thought, because he certainly doesn't mind hurling comments around about me, and I will address one of those actually right now around the petition that he railed about the other day. The woman who brought that petition to me asking if I would table it was one of his constituents, and she was sick, quite sick. Had the doctor's information there to explain why she was sick from the use of a pesticide, and 400 signatures. Her MLA wouldn't table that for her. I told her that I didn't agree with everything in the operative clause. I found the setbacks for spraying. I said we hadn't really investigated what they could be, should be, might be, or anything like that. But I did believe she had every right to have her petition tabled in the House. And actually, it was the members' staff at the department worked with them and with the farmer, and actually, it was her neighbor who was leasing the land to the farmer who was using the pesticide was actually the one who kind of came to her aid, I think, really, for the most part, and wouldn't allow the leaser to use that pesticide in the future. So it was really her neighbor who came to her aid, and was a farmer who came to her aid, and I think people deserve help when they come looking for it. A lot has been said about my lack of involvement in the task force. I want to say that I'm willing to give anyone the benefit of the doubt, Mr. Speaker. Matter of fact, if the government had come and asked me to go on a task force in May when the mad cow crisis had occurred, I think I would have been happy to do that. 5 months. 5 months, and I have correspondence back to the Honourable, the member from Digby-Annapolis, the previous member from Digby-Annapolis, when he was minister, I think going back as late as May, and it's just been more of the same, Mr. Speaker. And actually, the terms of reference, as the member for Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley alluded to, but the goal of the Nova Scotia Task Force on BSE is to assess the government's response to the BSE situation by October 31st. In pursuing this goal, the task force will be guided by the following objectives: determine the impacts of the BSE crisis on the Nova Scotia agricultural industry, determine the capacity of existing federal, provincial, and other industry programs to address the impacts. Mr. Speaker, the minister has a department who can tell him that in an hour. The minister had made the statement after they announced the task force. The minister made the statement there'd be no new money, and the member from Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley is saying, you know, money isn't everything, or you can't always throw money at these problems. But that's what the industry is saying. They need money. They gave an inventory of where they thought that money should be spent. They are in trouble. Agriculture in this province, Mr. Speaker, is in serious trouble. And I want to table this. And this is part of my thinking about going on the task force. This is a task force that was done with the department and Pork Nova Scotia, and it was given to me by Mr. Herman Burfalo of Pork Nova Scotia, who is a constituent of the member from Colchester, Muscatdelbert Valley. They said, you might as well take that. We were on a task force. Nothing has come out of that task force, and that was done in the spring. It was done in April, Mr. Speaker. So if that's evidence of what this government is going to do with information gained in a task force, then I want to say that it is a waste of time. And I told the minister, I told the member from Annapolis, if something good comes out of this task force for the farmers in Nova Scotia, beef producers, then they will have my accolades. I will stand in this House and I will applaud them and I will congratulate them for doing the right thing if they do the right thing, which I am not expecting to see happen. Now, all members, be it resolved that all members of this House acknowledge the recent challenges faced by farmers in this province. Well, we can stand here and acknowledge it. We had an emergency debate to try to draw attention to it. But I am not at all assured that anything is going to happen other than the talk. If this government wants to show that they really mean what's in this resolution, then do something. Farmers are out of time. The honourable member from Colchester, Muscatdelbert Valley mentioned the Irving family. They are constituents of mine. I went to school with them. I heard yesterday, actually, that they sold out, that they sold their operation, and they're out of it. They're out of dairy farming. They couldn't wait for nothing. They couldn't wait to hear what this government was going to do because they need to know. Farmers need to know now. The question that the honourable member from Cole Harbour and the leader of our party had raised today about the Vermeulen family, I worked for them for a year, 20 plus years ago. I know them well. They didn't get to where they are by doing nothing. They've made an investment in their community. They're here for the long term. They need help. And they're not small operators. They spent in August $150,000 in the surrounding communities. Now, to me, if the government was looking at any other business, they'd say, well, we're going to get that back through jobs and taxes, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to agriculture, they don't take that view. So if this government really wants to acknowledge the recent challenges, then they would act accordingly, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say, if I can find it, which I probably won't, I had a couple of excerpts. One was from an op-ed piece from Bruce Roberts, and it was, here it is, the Chronicle Herald, and I can table this, Mr. Speaker, Friday, October 3rd. The government's current approach to farming and farmers borders on neglect and disrespect. Structures and attitudes that once supported communication and cooperation between farmers and their government have all but disappeared. The government's current attitude is one that implies that it knows what is best for the industry and that farmers should just be quiet and take what it decides to impose upon us. Now, Mr. Roberts, a PhD and in agriculture, a farmer, consultant, and second vice president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture. Now, he was originally in New Brunswick and came to Nova Scotia because he thought that their government actually had programs and policies in place that were far more progressive than where he had been farming, and he thought Nova Scotia would be a better place to set up a farming operation. Now, in the debate the other night, a former minister, the minister responsible for EMO, he made this statement. There has been some success, but the recent round of negotiations leading up to the new APF that was signed, obviously, I think, provides more money. It's an additional $3 million for income support for farmers per year, although linked to the agreement. But what was not readily supplied to the provincial government and to the producers was definition in detail. I don't believe the producers are sure it's a better program. The dollars are better, there's no question about that, but if I'm a producer, the devil's in the details. And what the minister is saying, that the detail wasn't available to the government when they signed the APF. So why did they do it? Why would they not make sure they knew what they were signing? Why wouldn't they make sure that this was something that would really help Nova Scotia producers, Mr. Speaker? And I don't think I have to table this because I got it out of Hansard. It's great to acknowledge agriculture, but let's not make it just talk. Let's make it some action that's really going to do something. The task force I see as a dodge for the minister for question period for a month. Anything that we raise, well, the task force looking into that. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to really see some action by this government that shows that it really does acknowledge the challenges that face agriculture today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come from an agricultural community. It's quite diverse, as a matter of fact. We come not only as beef, a major part of my riding, but dairy as well, cranberry bogs, chicken, just to name a few. What's been interesting, though, I don't think I've stood on a more fertile piece of ground than since I've come to Halifax. Listening to some of the talk that has been happening in the House over the last little while has been interesting, to say the least. I want to thank the member from Colchester Musquodoboit Valley for bringing forward this motion. And I too want to comment, and it's easy for us to acknowledge that there were recent challenges faced by the agricultural industry. We could easily get 52 people to agree to that. But that has to be followed with money. Where does the money come from? And if I had any advice to the Minister of Agriculture, it would be the first and foremost, he should start developing a good rapport with the Federation of Agriculture. Whether we want to admit it or not, there is absolutely no confidence in the agricultural community in the government department. Absolutely zero. Now, we can say that didn't just happen yesterday, and that's probably true. But if we look from 1999 to present day, what has happened in agriculture? Department has been merged, $20 million taken out. Time after time, when a crisis hits, the answer is, let's look to Ottawa. Well, if that is the solution of this government, to allow Ottawa to dictate the agricultural policy of Nova Scotia, let's say that. Let's eliminate the minister. Let us talk directly to the federal minister. Part of that restructuring took place, which created a government-sponsored, government-funded technology and branch department, if you want to say, AgriPoint. We're putting roughly $2 million a year into this. This, if you look at the financial statement of that entity, they've got $1.34 million in the bank. And we're standing here saying we can't come up with any money to support a real issue in the agricultural community. One that I think, personally, will be the end to agriculture in rural Nova Scotia if we do not deal with the issue of the BSE. The member from Colchester Musquodoboit Valley mentioned correctly, this is not just a beef industry problem. When you look at the dairy industry, and many of them will tell you they feel somewhat, I won't say ashamed, but embarrassed by the fact that they're talking, because they're in a pretty good spot, but they're feeling the crunch. Imagine if you don't have the dairy, the milk production to fall back on, and you're sitting there. The federal BSE program is run out and not being extended by the province. Much of our industry is a cow-calf operation. Many of them held on to their product until the fall. What do? Where does the money come from for them to move forward? It doesn't, Mr. Speaker. Many of them will not survive. Many of them just will not survive. I found it interesting today when I asked the minister about the $2.5 million, whether it was new money or not, and the answer was he had found that, and that was in the department. $2.5 million has been sitting in the department. Why wasn't that allocated to producers long before this? Why are we sitting here saying we have no money, yet today we come up with $2.5 million? That's just not good enough, and it's certainly not good enough for rural Nova Scotia. I did agree to sit on this task force, and I am looking forward to it, actually. It's going to give me an opportunity to get around the province and meet a number of people in the industry, but it also will give me an opportunity, I think, to develop a relationship with the member from Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley. I don't know him personally. I know his reputation. And I believe if the people in the agricultural community say that they need money, him and I will stand shoulder to shoulder together, and I expect that. That's one of the reasons why I accepted this, because he was going to be chairing it. Because I believe he will do the right thing. He comes from an agricultural community, as I do. This is beyond political party. This is, as far as I'm concerned, the survival of agricultural and rural Nova Scotia. The task force, in many ways, will help alleviate what, or can help deal with a long-term fix to agriculture. When we look at a short-term solution, we're looking directly at needing money. When I mentioned earlier about the Federation of Agriculture, they put together a plan, $7 million. They were told at the point there wasn't any money. Well, lo and behold, today we come up with $2.5 million. I think when they put together their plan, they were being very conservative in their estimates on needing, what was really necessary to come through. They didn't put an outlandish amount of money on the table thinking that, well, they're going to lowball this and come in and they'll give us a little bit of money and that'll suffice. They hit what was really necessary, and that's $7 million, not 2.5. So when we get a chance to go around and listen and talk to the different members of the community and the agricultural community to hear what's going to happen, I look forward to that. As you may tell, I'm not quite as gifted at standing on my feet and talking as all the other members of the House. One of the things that I want to go back to is really, we spent a lot of time today talking about the last election, and I do want to talk just a little bit about that. And part of this is why we were bringing forward a separate ministry dealing with rural economic development. Because agriculture, whether we want to admit it or not, is more than just farmers. It is really part of what drives the economic engine of rural Nova Scotia. In my own riding, I think we have four pillars of what keeps us alive, and one of them is agriculture, forestry, fishing, and tourism. And the one that is agriculture is being undermined so badly that I'm not sure that my constituency could withstand any more hits from it, to be honest with you. Many of the people in my community, in the agricultural community I should say, are saying the $155 and a 10% tax cut is great if I was making any money. I'm not making any money. How is that going to impact on us? The better question is, how will that impact on rural Nova Scotia? It won't. Those industries are hurting. A 10% tax cut will do nothing. $7 million directed into that, directed so we could spend that money, keep that industry alive, so there would be a tomorrow. When you look at a 10% tax cut and a $155 check, well, I would dare say the $155 checks are probably gone. The member says his is. I'm sure it is. But what did it do to the economy of your area? What has it done to the agricultural people in your area? Maybe it hasn't done anything. This may come down to being an urban-rural split. This government was elected on dividing this province. Is that the secret? 4 years ago, we went Cape Breton against mainland. Is that it, divide and conquer? I can tell you rural Nova Scotia is going to remember this. Mr. Speaker, I do appreciate the opportunity to talk. I look forward to the task force and an opportunity to really try to find a solution to this. That's you know, I think the immediate solution is money. You know, you were in, Mr. Speaker, you were in Murray Siding and mentioned that fact. Some solutions need money as the solution sometimes, and I agree. But that's not the only solution. It is incumbent on the members of this House to look at agriculture, to look at our resource industries, and try to find a long-term solution. We cannot be continually trying to find solutions in crisis management. We need to be stepping in when the times are good and working with the industry. And again, before, in closing, I just want to encourage the Minister to start forging a relationship that is for the long-term good of agriculture, and by doing that, working with the Federation of Agriculture. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the honourable members for taking part in a very important debate this evening, and I have to say that all members articulated it very well. An industry that is in crisis in this province. Thank you. The House is adjourned until 12 p.m. tomorrow.